Yeah, I think my outfits are about to also get real audacious too. Yeah. Woo! All right. Welcome back to another episode of Living with Audacity. I am your podcast host, Aisha, and it is such a pleasure to be back. Have I mentioned that we're in season 2? Excited! All right, back to seriousness. So today's topic of conversation that I want to talk about is one that is dear to me. It is one that I have actively been in for some time. I think it's one, if you follow me on any platform, it's been my word for 2025, and that is refinement. Refinement, that we are in the season of refinement, growth without rush. So we're going to take some time and unpack what that means, right? I think when we talk about a refinement, when we talk about growth without rush, we want to focus on this beautiful process that comes with getting better. And why I chose the word very early on this year is that it really resonated with me, right? We definitely live in a culture, in a society where we thrive on this grind culture. I will be one to say that I found myself in that kind of vicious cycle, right? That if I didn't demonstrate that I was hustling and grinding, that I wasn't out there just doing all the things, that was I really demonstrating growth? Was I really showing up in all the ways that I needed to? That I needed to always look like I was reinventing myself, that I always needed to be constantly chasing something bigger and better. And I'm going to tell you something, if you are out here grinding and hustling, do your thing. But what I want to remind you of is the importance of growth without the rush. And today's episode is really going to be focusing on what comes with slowing down the process of growth and not getting caught up in the whirlpool or the whirlwind that sometimes we feel the pressure around, again, that grind and hustle culture, right? And again, for me, refinement really resonates because it's, for me, a season of growth. I am in this stage in my life, and I've been sharing this with my girlfriends. I am in a stage in my life where I almost feel like I'm on a movator. You know, when you go to the airport and the movator just kind of glides and you're watching people hustling and trying to get to the gate quicker and be the first ones at security, only to find yourself number 3,000 in the line. And you realize that you rushed kind of for no reason, and you ended up in the same place as the person that was just growing and moving slowly and taking time and looking around. They were probably only 5 people behind you. So it really resonated with me because I found myself on the other end of exhaustion, in that spin of hustle and grinding, and realizing that I was probably only half a step further than where I thought I was. And so I stepped into a space of refinement and recognizing that growth didn't need to be about speed. It actually needed to be about refinement and about expansion in intentional ways where I could not just see growth, but I could experience growth, that I could see it in all aspects of my life, not just related to my business, but who I was as a wife, as a mother, as a partner, as a colleague, as an entrepreneur. I really took the time to sit with the process of growth, even though it wasn't comfortable, even though I wanted to kind of, my natural desire was to move things along. I'd been on that side. I'd been on the side of the hustle and the grind. And as I said, it didn't really produce more than me being in this stage of life where I'm just in process. So I want you to kind of first, I want to first kind of define what refinement is, really. And refinement isn't, again, about tearing everything down. This is a big lesson that I learned. I think oftentimes when we think about growth, we think that we have to literally erase everything. If I'm in a stage of growth, it means that everything that I was doing before, everything that I thought, everything that I've been moving towards needs to just completely tear down, right? But refinement actually speaks otherwise. Refinement is about actually taking a step back and taking a look at the big picture and thinking, okay, the things that are in front of me, the things that I've been doing, the people that I've been connected with, the opportunities that have presented themselves, are they on a path or are they in alignment with who I'm desiring to become? right? And so sometimes in that desire to grow, we feel compelled to erase and eradicate everything. But what you might actually be undoing and removing are the most significant aspects of your growth that you actually need as your foundational parts for growth, right? So I want you to focus on that. So one of the first things I want to talk about is again, this concept of big change versus refinement. So as I said, when we think about big change, and I always laugh to myself because they're like, what do you want to think? Or what do you say? I'm obviously right now talking to myself, but please feel free to throw some comments out there. But when we talk about big change, right, what comes up? What means when we think about big change, we're talking about, as I said, removing everything, undoing, unveiling, taking away, eradicating, erasing, all these things that maybe might be good for us. We feel compelled to want to undo everything that's happening to us. But what I've learned in the power of refinement is that sometimes the things that we want to get rid of are the very things that we need. We just need to tighten. We need to get hyper focused. We need to get sharpshooter focused on that one thing that we thought wasn't doing us justice, but in fact, as I said, is that seed that we need to plant even deeper in new soil. So think about things that you're seeking in your life, right? Are you looking to change jobs? Are you looking to, even shift or change careers? Are you looking to leave a partner? Are you looking to, get into a relationship? Are you looking to, as I said, leave a relationship? Are you looking to end something, anything? Are you looking to start a business, right? What does that mean? Right? Do you have to really undo and throw everything that you've done in the past away? Or do you get to refine and really focus on an aspect that you know is going to support your growth? And I read something that I thought was really powerful, and it says, growth doesn't always have to be loud, dramatic, or disruptive. And I say that not because it needs to be outward. I say that even for ourselves. Does it have to be loud, dramatic, and disruptive? Does everybody need to know that we're going through a change? Does everybody need to know that what we're doing is a life-altering experience? Does everyone need to know that it's so dramatic that we're going through this change? Again, we live in a culture where, it's sad to say, where we almost thrive on disruption and drama. Big shout out to Cardi B's new record, Am I the Drama? This is totally off topic, but I said drama and it made me think of her because I love her. But right, we need to think about that. Like, we kind of thrive in a society where the more dramatic things are and the more we're able to thrive through that drama is almost supposed to be this definition of elevation and change. And I want to challenge that. I want to challenge that understanding of what refinement is, right? Of what it could be, and how it needs to actively kind of change the narrative around, again, this need for big, out loud growth, right? And the other thing about growth is that growth without rush. Okay, so think about this. I want you to think about any significant change that has happened in your life. How did you feel, right? We feel anxious, we feel stressed, we feel emotional, maybe we feel sad, maybe we feel angry, but we're overwhelmed with this rush of emotions. But what do we try to do is we try to rush through that process. And in that rush, I was going to say in that rushment, that's not a word. If you've ever watched season 1, I also like to make up words. So we're going to use rushment as a word in this context. But if we think about the discomfort that comes in growth and the discomfort in sitting some of those in those uncomfortable emotions, then I want you to think about what you're missing out on. When you are in the process of refinement, again, you are actively sitting in sometimes the greatest discomfort of life. But what are you taking away? What are you learning? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you learning about yourself in those moments of refinement, right? I've shared this in season 1. For me, not getting a job that I thought I was absolutely equipped to do, to be honest, it should have been my job. Didn't happen. And I was furious. But I also had to sit in that fury and think to yourself, Aisha, what really happened there? What are you going to learn from a situation that felt like it was catastrophic? And at the time, it felt catastrophic. And there were two things that I learned in that process that would basically be the catalyst for the journey that I've been on for 6 years. Number one is that I spent so many years putting my value and my worth in other people's hands. That job that I was convinced was my job was really based on this acceptance that if I got the job, it means that the people that had the power felt that I was ready. That was the first lesson. My second lesson was that I didn't do introspective work. I went into that interview with the assumption that because they'd seen all the work that I had done, that I didn't really need to perform, that I didn't really need to highlight and shine my light so that they could really see that I was the right person. Hard lessons to accept, but the best lessons of, I would say, my journey in my 40s. I just celebrated a birthday. I'm 46, but one of the most powerful lessons I learned. Because what I had to learn in that experience was that, again, my worth was not contingent on what other people felt about me. Their value of myself came second to the value and the worth that I held for myself. And second, that I needed to stop living in the shadows, that I needed to come into the light. And if people were uncomfortable with the brightness of who I was, then I would recommend that they get UV-60 lenses because I was about to come outside. And that happened not in rushing through the experience of fury and anger, but sitting in it. And that for me was a strong process of refinement because I had to refine and dig deep into a narrative and a mindset that I had about myself and how I was showing up, right? I also want us to think about, again, the personal journey of refinement, right? So forget about all the external things that are happening around us. Who we are when we're 16 looks different to when we're 21. I've said this 1,000,001 times. It's different to who we are at 30. Who I was at 21 looks really different to who I was at 40, who I am at 46, not who I was, who I am at 46. This personal journey of refinement has been ugly. It has not been pretty, but it has been so beautiful because it has allowed me to really unpack and let go of things that weren't serving me, that I knew in my gut, in my mind, and in my heart that weren't serving me. But again, because I was so focused on this concept of growth and demonstrating out loud that I was evolving, that I was being blind to kind of my own introspective thought. The personal journey of refinement actually has to be in silence. It has to be in quiet. It cannot be out loud. If you're out here saying like, I was this and I was that and now I'm this and now I'm that, and you're making all these proclamations, have you really changed or are you proclaiming the change? There's a big difference. Making a statement about a change and actively engaged in change are two very different things. And that's why I kind of talked about, again, that growth doesn't have to be dramatic and it doesn't have to be disruptive and it doesn't have to be out loud. If anything, it should happen in quiet and silence. And the people around you should be able to like almost experience these micro changes in ways where they're like, I'm feeling like she's a little bit different. I'm sensing that there's a difference. I'm experiencing something differently. You almost want to leave them intrigued, right? Like I love the word kinder surprise, almost like a little kinder surprise. So I want you to think about what that personal refinement looks like. You do not have to outwardly proclaim that you are changing. That's a lot of energy expelled because really, let's be honest, like in the evolution of change, we might be heading down one path, something happens and we pivot. And then what happens, we have to explain why we are no longer on this path or why we're doing something differently. And if there's anything that I've learned, people that are watching, like they watch. And then they challenge, and then they question, and then we feel compelled to answer the question, right? But when you're changing and evolving and refining in silence, all you're letting people know is that I'm tapping back into myself, that I am evolving, and that what you're about to experience is something different, right? You're about to see and maybe hear something different, but that it's in these like little micro ways that they're going to see that. And so really, how can we embrace, right? How do we embrace our own refinement? What are the things that we need to do, right? Number one, which is my number one rule for everything, be honest with yourself. If you are in an active stage of change, be honest about your change. Be honest about the unveiling or the unpeeling or the releasing or, the emancipation that you're going through. We can convince ourselves of anything. And if we are not being honest with ourselves, and I can assure you that the process of refinement will not be authentic. Okay. So one of the first things you need to do is just pause. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I am someone, I have this joke. One of my girlfriends is she's a mindfulness coach, and she's tried super hard to get me to step into mindfulness. And the only thing that happens for me in mindfulness is me telling myself that I need to calm down and stop talking to myself and relax. Right. But what I realized is that the quietness that I needed, the pause that I needed, was because I was distracting myself with an inner chatter that was, as I said, distracting myself from the real work. When you pause and you sit in silence and you listen to your thoughts, you are forced to confront probably some really, pardon my language, shitty things that you're telling yourself about yourself. The art of refinement requires you to be so deeply connected to the things that you are telling yourself about yourself. And oftentimes, I'm going to be honest, they aren't kind. Right? Because we aren't sitting here thinking, I'm amazing, I'm great, I'm so phenomenal at what I do. We're like, I'm not ready. I haven't done enough. I still need to do more. I'm not educated enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm all these things. That's actually the narrative that we find ourselves overwhelmed with. But you have to sit in silence and hear that. Because again, if you're going to refine yourself, if you're going to refine that mindset, then you have to confront those negative conversations that you're having with yourself. The next one after you pause is to notice. Notice how the things that you're doing are either supporting or actually creating barriers or additional challenges to your stage of refinement, to your process of refinement, right? Pay attention to what feels heavy. Pay attention to where you're pouring your energy, where or what's taking up your time, whether it's people, places, or things. Maybe it's a relationship dynamic. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it's children. I'm going to keep it 100. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's home. Maybe it's work. But you need to notice the things in your life that are creating barriers and challenges. And sometimes the things that are in our innermost circle are the things that are creating the greatest drama. And listen, as I've shared before, I'm not telling you to cut off your kids and cut off your partner and tell your work tomorrow that you're quitting. Please don't do that. And if you do, just know that that was a personal choice that you made. Had nothing to do because you listened to the podcast. But I say that because you need, again, to be honest. Notice and acknowledge the things that you're struggling with, that are barriers to you refining who you are. And it very well may likely be a person or a thing or a situation that you're deeply connected to. So notice that and think about the ways in which you're going to make those changes. And the last part of that, or the last part of this, is really shifting. Right? Now, it is really easy for us to say, this is what I desire for myself. But what is the verb? What is the action that you're going to put in place to actively begin the shift? And again, I go back to how I started this conversation, right? When I talk about shift, I'm not talking about going from 0 to 100. That's our desire. We want to demonstrate that I was here and now I'm there, right? But what small, incremental, consistent shifts are you going to make in your life where now you're on a permanent trajectory to refinement and your greatness? Right? And again, you don't need to declare these shifts, but you need to be intentional about what these shifts are. And so what does this look like, right? How does this actively play out, right? So after you pause, after you notice, after you shift, how do you actually hold yourself accountable? Because that's a big one. The other day I was talking to my friend Actually, he called me. It's my photographer, Andre. And he's like, I just heard online about this new app where you can ask your friends to audio their voices to be your accountability coach. So as an example, if I'm going to be his accountability coach and I know that he needs to always find himself in bed, I can pre-record messages on this app that's like, Andre, go to bed at 11 o'clock. Or Andre, you need to eat your vegetables. Whatever it is, whatever that looks like. I thought it actually was hilarious and I need to look into that. But I say that because, again, we also need to hold ourselves accountable. It's so easy to be like, okay, I'm on this journey. I'm in this stage of refinement and I want to make sure that certain people know so that they can hold me accountable. Lovely. But how are you holding yourself accountable? What are you doing to ensure that you are the one leading your journey? Because this is the process of living audaciously. I'm going to keep it 100. You have to be the captain of your ship. Sounds super cliche, but it's true. You cannot place responsibility on other people to lead you down your path. It is easy for me to say, oh, well, my partner didn't create this scenario for me so that I can come and podcast, or my kids, have schedules that I, find myself outside, driving them everywhere. That's a reality, right? Not the part about my husband not allowing me to podcast. Let me caveat that. Very supportive. But I have 3 kids. Life is busy. But if I allow their schedules to supersede what it is that I need for myself, then I can't blame them. I need to blame myself because I am not tapping into what it is that I need. Now, I know there might be people who say, well, Aisha, that's so easy for you to say. Whatever. There's 1,000,001 people that always say, well, you make it look so easy. I could tell you behind the scenes, this is not how I show up every day, right? But how I do show up every day is with an intentional or with intentionality about how I'm going to pour into myself. Because in order for me to show up as the mother and the wife or the friend, I actively need to pour into myself. So some of the practical ways that you can step into refinement is, number 1, journaling. Right? How are you holding your own self accountable, right? To the things that you need to do. How are you journaling? Says, today, Aisha, I'm going to commit to this. Or Aisha, let's be real. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. Number 1. Number 2, monthly reflections. Like, be honest with yourself. What is the introspective work that you're doing on a continuum to make sure that you are taking care and making yourself a priority? And accountability partners. Obviously you want to have people in your life that are holding you accountable, but make sure that you're at the top of that list. Okay. And so again, as we step into this journey of refinement, as we continue on our own journey, as we understand what refinement is, understand that it doesn't have to be big and loud and that everybody needs to know about it. It can be silent. It can be ugly, but it's on your own time. Okay. We are here for a long time. Okay. Season 2 is going to go on forever. Well, it's not going to go on forever. Just this podcast is going to go on forever. But I want to remind you, as we wrap up and we really think about, again, what this journey looks like, I want you to remember that refinement is about alignment, not urgency. Okay. This, I know my daughter's going to kill me when she sees this, but refinement is about alignment, not urgency. Don't feel the need or the rush to grow, right? It's on your own time. It's how you need it to be. It's when you need it to be. And again, it doesn't need to be loud where everybody needs to see it happening. You know what your own journey is. You know what the desired outcome is. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes you actually need to keep it to yourself. There is power in secrecy. There is power in growing in silence. There is power in not having the disruption and the opinions of the perspectives of people in your own process of refinement. Because people will see what they need to see about you, but only you know the depths of who you are. Even if they love you, even if they care for you, even if they're about you, I encourage you to move through the process of refinement in silence and just allow people to experience what those changes are, where you're growing, where you're elevating. And those people that in your process of refinement that no longer find themselves in your space, they'll figure it out. But again, it doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be boisterous, and it doesn't need to be dramatic. If anything, there was power in silence. I want to thank you for joining another episode of Living with Audacity. You know what you need to do. Like, share, comment, become a subscriber. Again, I'm really looking forward to what season 2 has to bring. Wishing you all a great day.